So Sebastian Fundora versus Errol Spence looks like a done deal. Terrence Crawford stepped aside and is allowing this fight to happen. It's going to be for the WBO and the WBC titles that Fundora holds. I'm a big fan of Errol Spence. I've been watching boxing since about 2019, 2020. And Errol Spence is one of the fighters that I first, grasped onto. I've always loved that, break you down pressure style. We haven't seen Errol Spence since 2023 of last year. So the momentum is going to be on Fundora's side. He just fought in March of this year. To be honest with Spence, realistically, he should already be at 160. But the accident, he had some injuries, the retina injury for the Pacquiao camp. He had the infamous car crash, and then he actually had another car crash as well. So he's been through a lot of accidents and things that have halted his career. I do think that durability wise, he's not the same. Even before the Crawford fight, he got rocked by Ugas. I don't think Errol Spence before the car accident would have ever got hurt by Ugas. Ugas is not a big puncher. He was able to rock Errol pretty bad in two instances. Also, Danny Garcia rocked him at one point with the overhand. So I do think his durability is not the same. But we have to take into account that, at 147, he stayed at the weight for way too long. So he was diminished. That's just the reality. Also, I've seen a lot of guys, close to his camp speak about how he had a rib injury at the later part of the Crawford camp, and he wasn't able to spar for the last few weeks. So, I think Crawford is always going to be a bad style for Spence. He might have his number at this point, but Fundora is a totally different fighter. I've been seeing a lot of people say that Fundora's going to smash him, he's going to wreck him, he's going to stop Errol Spence. At 154, it's not going to be a drastic cut. I believe Spence rocks around in the 80s, so it's still going to be a cut, but it won't be as bad as 147. So I do think he'll be more energized. And I also think that Fundora is being overrated at this point. The bottom line is, if Zoo wasn't cut, I think Zoo would have stopped Fundora at some point or would have beat him to a decision. For a lot of that fight, he had Fundora on the back foot. And there was times where Fundora had him on the back foot. I do think when Fundora's on the front foot, he could be dangerous. He's starting to use his length. He worked his jab. He's starting to show a little glimpse of an IQ and, using his length for once. So if he is able to put Spence on the back foot, I do think it's going to be dangerous for Spence, especially with his jab. But also Fundora, in my opinion, has lost his snap. He's not as snappy as he used to be before he got knocked out. I wonder if, that altered him or, changed his mindset, because Fundora is not as ferocious as he used to be, in my opinion. But for most of Spence's fights, he always puts the opposite fighter on the back foot. So I do think he'll be able to back Fundora up. I believe Spence is going to be the stronger fighter. I believe he's going to be able to work his jab. Rip hooks to the body off of Fundora's straight shots. Fundora throws a lot of uppercuts or straight shots, so I don't think a lot of hooks are going to be coming from him. And he's very vulnerable off the back foot. He is not the same fighter. Zoo has showed that at times. He was barely missing with his right hand, and I do think that was due to the blood. Versus Mendoza. Mendoza had Fundora on the back foot at times as well. Fundora stands very tall in the pocket, or he doesn't really move. He keeps his head on the center line. He's a very stationary target, and Mendoza exposed that. He was able to eventually knock him out and make him pay for staying on that center line. Hit him with a flush left hook, and then landed a right hook over that, put him away cold. Even Lubin at times. Lubin, he shares a similarity with Spence. They're both southpaws, just like Fundora. So they're going to be in the same stance. It's not going to be an open stance fight. They're going to be southpaw versus southpaw. Lubin was able to make Fundora pay at times on the back foot, landing blistering combinations. Lubin was able to actually find that left hook in between his combinations. So with guys like Zoo, Jermell Charlo, if he's back at 154, we'll see with him. Ortiz. Just the top echelon at 154. I don't think Spence could beat, those guys, but I do think he'll be competitive with all of them, of course. I just don't believe his durability would, hold up. But Fundora, for me, is not really a top 5 154 pounder. It might be crazy to say, but I think, all those guys I just named are above him. That cut really helped him win the fight, in my opinion. But nevertheless, I do believe this is a style that Spence can beat, and I'm confident, even with the durability scares at this point, he could beat Fundora. As long as he puts Fundora on the back foot, I think Spence will have his way, and he'll eventually get to Fundora, stopping him in a common Spence fashion, the 8th to 10th round, maybe 11th. I think he'll stop him very late, but he will win the fight. And maybe he could set up a rematch with Crawford and win or loss, retire with a good paycheck and, cement his legacy, because I do think Errol Spence is a Hall of Famer, because I do think that, his career was a little altered with the car crash and, just the setbacks. I just wanted to speak a little bit about, this announcement. I think it's a fun fight.
Yes. Yes. Surprise. You gay.
I'm a better body puncher than him.
Listen,
and I hit harder than him.
I ain't sparring tank.